for Tuesday, August 18th, 2020. This is the Pro and Con Show, and I am your host, Michael James Ott. As always, welcome to the show. So, just a couple words at the beginning. So, encouraging all of us to be better citizens, okay? So, greater understanding of the issues, greater understanding of each other's opinions, and how. And one of the great ways, regardless of how much, and I don't care who this is in your life, if you are having a big dispute with somebody, a neighbor or something, even if it's not politically motivated, it's over whatever. Stop and just say, look, honestly, may I respectfully ask you to tell me about your walk in life that got you to the place where you're in this position on this issue. And I would ask that you would respectfully listen to my walk in life and how I got to where I am. And by virtue of having that exchange, you and I, we're going to feel better about each other as people, because you're going to find that there's a lot of common ground. But anyway, today's show is called Denial. And the reason why I bring it up is that there's a significant portion of people in this country and around the world that are in denial over this pandemic, this novel coronavirus that's killing so many people. And so one of the things that's very helpful for all of us is to be self-aware. Okay, to think about us and how we behave, how we react to things, just so we understand ourselves better. Because again, that's one of those things where you can have like a short-term reaction and a long-term reaction. And the short-term reaction is usually like fight or flight kinds of things. So anger or run, right? But in the long term, which is the better thinking, the more reasoned approach, the where you make better decisions, better plans, better things forward that are better for you. Okay, these things are to be considered. Okay, and one of the big things that you, all of us, you, me, all of us should think about is, how do humans behave? How do we react to some of these things? And so I found an article on, and yes, it's on CNN, but some people are in denial of the pandemic. Why? And my main point behind talking about this is just to talk about this mechanism, this human psychology, that it's us, okay, this is how we do these things, we're humans. We behave, in certain ways. And one of those things is the psychology around denial. So I'm just going to read a few things. I apologize, I hate reading stuff, but it's probably the most effective way to get this across. So what is denial, and why do we deny things that would seem to be obviously true? Well, denial is a way for people to defend themselves against anxiety. When they're in periods where there's a lot of anxiety and there's perceived threats, then people develop strategies to protect themselves and their sense of security and safety. And one of these is simply to deny that the threatening source exists. In this case, you would simply say, well, the epidemic is a hoax. It doesn't really exist. Why do some people deny or rationalize? Okay. Whether you react to situations with stress and anxiety, or you react with more positive mechanisms for figuring out how to deal with them, has to do with your sense of control over the situations. When the pandemic was first announced, there was very little information and we didn't know what kinds of precautions we should be taking. So there was definitely no sense of control So a lot of anxiety, and a lot, again, it's a normal psychological thing for humans to look at things and say, oh, you know, I am feeling a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear perhaps about that. And so one of the ways that I can react is I'm just going to deny that that's really true. Okay. Um, so how can being in denial be dangerous? Well, denial is considered a maladaptive thing, okay, in human psychology, meaning that they don't help the individual adapt to the source of the threat. It can actually expose them to an even greater chance of whatever that threatening thing is. In this case of the pandemic, you could become ill because if you're in denial, you're rationalizing the severity of the situation, and you're saying that you're not going to take the proper necessary precautions to protect yourself. So where do people learn denial behaviors? Okay. Well, these types of behaviors develop in children and are typically reinforced by parents. By the age of 6 or 7 or 8, a child is able to make sense of what's fact and what's fiction. But in our culture, fiction is reinforced often with parents and children. You know, there's a Santa Claus and an Easter Bunny. And some of that is part of development and helps children with fantasy. And fantasy can be a good thing, but sometimes we see it become extreme. So the key is, as parents, we teach children to face decisions, not with facts, but with faith, belief, or faith. And when adults, and we've been raised in an environment where unfounded beliefs are part of our upbringing, they are much more likely to believe in hoaxes or denial or conspiracy theories. Okay? And so people that have been brought up this way tend to make decisions based on hunches and preconceived ideas and biases as opposed to use the factual information. Okay? So if your parents, when you were a child, if they were often talking about, conspiracies and these things are going to happen, if they were not focused, especially when you're getting a little bit older, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, if they were not focused on you being focused on the factual kinds of stuff, instead they kept kind of promoting that stories and these kinds of things, non-factual or fictional kinds of things. If they were kind of promoting those things in your life as a child, you have a tendency to keep that and to, use fictional information or visions to to deny the facts, and again, a dangerous situation. So the other part of it is, if you create a bubble by surrounding yourself with people who believe the way that you believe, okay, and then if you also search out information that's only associated with the way that you're thinking, then you basically are reinforcing, okay, your denial. And this is inappropriate. And this is one of the reasons why the show is called the Pro and Con Show. Good and bad, for and against, pro and con. Every single issue that we face, every single thing that we do, there is pro and con, good and bad, for and against. And you have to, as a good thinking adult, you have to take into account that these things are true. Okay? And so if spending a lot of time just focused on certain sources of information or certain people that think exactly the same way that you do, you're going to get into trouble, because you're going to reinforce some of these things that they're just not factual, and you're not allowing yourself to at least think about the pro and the con, the good and the bad, the for and against. And that's dangerous. Okay, and I've talked about why that is, and it does make sense that it's dangerous, right? To just ignore, some of the cons of whatever, position you're thinking at the moment. Doesn't that sound like that's dangerous? For the Pro and Con Show, my name is Michael James Ott, and I'm your host. And until the next show, bye for now.